The forest is alive with the sound of snapping jaws and the desperate rasp of steel against fur. Guards circle the royal carriage, their knuckles white as they ward off a pack of starving wolves. Julius, panic coating his voice, screams for a retreat, but his words die in his throat. Emerging from the shadows isn't another beast, but something far worse. The notorious criminal, Lobelia Crowley, his silhouette cutting through the moonlight like a jagged blade. Lobelia doesn't reach for a sword. He just stands there, a terrifying calm radiating from him as the wolves snarl at his feet. One of the guards falls to his knees, eyes wide with despair, realizing their escape route is completely cut off. To them, the wolves are a death sentence, but the man standing before them is a calamity. Lobelia's hand moves, and a dark, eye-adorned magic book manifests in the air, its pages fluttering like the wings of a dying bird. "Scatter, small fry," he mutters, his voice a low, cold vibration. In a few minutes, this man will summon a gate to hell itself to swallow a literal god, leaving a city in ruins and a hero in tears. But right now, the guards can only watch in terror as they prepare for what they believe is the end of their lives. The air begins to ripple with a scorching, oppressive heat. From the open spellbook, Lobelia unleashes his advanced fire attribute magic, the Infernal Circle. It's not just a spell, it's a command to the world to burn. A massive wall of fire erupts, a blinding crimson tide that sweeps across the forest floor. The wolves are gone in an instant, scattered or vaporized, leaving the carriage completely untouched amidst the charred earth. The guards can only stare, their mouths agape, as the smoke clears to reveal the man they feared most has just saved their lives. Lobelia steps forward, his gaze sweeping over the survivors. He asks if they are connected to the rebels, his tone sharp and demanding. Without waiting for a full answer, he reaches into his cloak and produces a powerful custom healing potion, tossing it toward a guard who is clutching the bloody stump where his arm used to be. The moment the liquid touches the guard's lips, something impossible happens. Flesh knits together, bone regrows, and in a flash of light, his severed arm is completely regenerated. The guards look at each other in absolute awe, unable to reconcile this incredible act of mercy with the monster described in the history books. The carriage door creaks open, and Princess Rien steps out, her eyes fixed on the mysterious savior. She begins to offer her thanks, but Lobelia dismisses her with a wave of his hand, claiming he was merely passing the time. Julius, however, isn't convinced. He rushes forward, frantic and trembling, to pull the princess back from the edge of what he perceives as a trap. Julius thrusts himself between the two, his sword shaking in his hand as he glares at Lobelia. He demands to know what the arrogant magician is really after, his voice cracking as he hurls insults at the man who just secured their survival. The other guards, fueled by fear and old prejudices, reluctantly draw their weapons again. Julius doesn't wait for a response. He grabs Princess Rien by the arm and drags her away, treating Lobelia like a plague that might infect them if they stay too long. But Lobelia isn't finished. He stops a young blonde knight with a sharp command, pulling him aside to deliver a secret warning. He tells the boy to head west, toward a town guarded by the pretentious Heroes Knights Guild, the only place where the princess will truly be safe from the shadows chasing her. His voice is like ice as he warns the knight that ignoring this advice means the princess's certain death. Without another word, he turns and walks into the darkness, his mind heavy with the weight of his own reputation. He knows what they call him, the arrogant magician, and he knows that no matter what he does, that shadow will follow him. Inside the safety of the carriage, Princess Rien is confused. She asks why everyone is so terrified of a man who just healed their dying and saved them from the pack. Julius's face pales as he explains the truth. That man was Lobelia Crowley, the most notorious villain in the kingdom. Julius paints a dark picture of Lobelia's past, describing a prodigy from the Magic Academy who used his brilliance for nothing but destruction and personal gain. He tells her of the lives ruined and the blood spilled, cementing the image of a demon in human skin. Julius spatters his words with disgust for all black magic users, but the princess remains quiet. Internally, she remembers the way he looked. There was no malice in his eyes, no greed in his gestures. She wonders why a man so evil would help her without asking for a single coin in return. As she blushes at the memory of his cool, composed presence, the young knight suggests they change their route toward the Heroes Guild. He keeps Lobelia's advice a secret, sensing that the truth would only spark more fear, even if it is the only path to safety. The soldiers fall silent, reflecting on the miracle they just witnessed. They were ready to die, and yet they live because of a man they were taught to hate. Is it possible that every rumor, every story they've ever heard about Lobelia Crowley is a lie? But the man the world knows as Lobelia isn't who they think he is. In another life, he was Saikyou Arima, a 23-year-old part-timer who spent his days immersed in video games. He was ordinary, unremarkable, until the moment he woke up inside the very world he used to play for fun. The realization hits him like a physical blow. He hasn't just been transported to a fantasy world. He has been reincarnated as the most wicked, most despised villain in the mobile RPG Arcadia fantasy. He knows this game inside out. He knows the hero, Reinhardt, a man blessed with the brave flame and the unwavering trust of every person he meets. Reinhardt is the light of this world, the destined savior who everyone loves. And then there's him, Lobelia Crowley, one of the 12 strongest magicians in existence, a master of forbidden black magic, and a man whose name is synonymous with betrayal. In the game, he was the obstacle that the hero had to overcome, the darkness that had to be purged. Saikyou frantically flips through Lobelia's diary, his heart hammering against his ribs. He remembers the ending of the game with terrifying clarity. Lobelia dies. He is hunted, defeated, and executed. If he doesn't change the script, he is a walking dead man. Yet, there's a twist. Among the players, Lobelia was actually a fan favorite. They loved him as a tragic figure, a man whose descent into villainy was paved with heartbreak. Saikyou decides right then and there. Lobelia deserves a happy ending, and he's going to be the one to give it to him. The memories of the real Lobelia begin to surface, taking us back to a small village on the border during the Great Human-Demon War. He wasn't born a monster. He was a boy living in crushing poverty, caring for his sickly father and his little sister, Eru. He would do anything for them, even if it meant stealing bread to keep them from starving. One day, while foraging, he found a collapsed demon. Most would have finished it off, but young Lobelia couldn't leave a living being to rot in the dirt. His family, despite having almost nothing, shared their meager rations with the creature. The demon eventually recovered and left, offering deep gratitude. In that moment, Lobelia felt a spark of pride. He had done something good, something that mattered. That pride turned to ash when the demon returned, not with thanks, but with an army. The very creature he saved led a slaughter that devastated the village. Lobelia watched as the men were murdered, his father included, and the women and children were dragged away into the nightmare of slavery. Thrown into a cold, iron cage, the young Lobelia was consumed by a guilt so heavy it threatened to snap his mind. Every scream from the other prisoners felt like a direct accusation. This was his fault. He had saved the enemy, and his family paid the price. Driven by a desperate need to escape the echoes of his own failure, he managed to break his shackles and flee into the city streets. He ran until his lungs burned, eventually colliding with a refined, aristocratic man wearing spectacles. The man didn't call the guards. He saw the broken boy in front of him and offered a hand. This was the head of the Crowley family, a childless noble who decided to adopt the runaway slave and give him a name, a home, and a future. Lobelia threw himself into his studies at the Grand Chariot Magic Academy, becoming a prodigy who stood at the top of his class. But the trauma of the past was a poison in his veins. He was volatile, violent, and prone to lashing out at anyone who looked at him the wrong way. On the day of his graduation, he ran to his adoptive father, clutching his top honors like a shield. He wanted just one word of praise, one sign that he was finally enough. But the man didn't even look up from his desk. He told Lobelia that grades were meaningless compared to character. Then came the words that shattered what was left of his world. "You are no longer my son," his father declared. The Crowleys were tired of his scandals and his anger. They were cutting him loose, casting him back into the void he had fought so hard to escape. Rejection turned to rage. If the world only saw him as a problem, he would become a catastrophe. He spiraled into the dark, his mind a loop of the cages and the blood from his childhood, deciding that if he couldn't be loved, he would be feared. He turned to the most forbidden arts, using his genius to master black magic that could level cities. He was ready to burn it all down until the hero, Reinhard, appeared. "In the name of the hero, I have come to stop you," the golden boy shouted, standing for everything Lobelia had lost. Lobelia fought the hero's knights alone for 2 full days and nights, a whirlwind of dark energy against their coordinated strikes. But in the end, he was just one man. Reinhard looked down at him and said, "In front of the power of our friendship, you can't win by yourself." Lobelia knelt in the dirt, the humiliation more painful than any wound. He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Friendship? Is that all it took to justify his suffering? He vowed then that he would make Reinhard feel the same despair that had been his only companion for years. He became a recurring nightmare for the hero, eventually joining the Demon King's army out of pure spite. But even there, he found no loyalty. He was betrayed by the demons and cursed with a weakening spell, forced into a final confrontation while his body was failing him. The game ended with Reinhard's sword piercing Lobelia's chest. The arrogant magician died alone, his heart full of secrets and his eyes finally losing their light. It was a perfect, tragic end for a villain, but a miserable fate for a human being. Back in the present, Seto Arima is literally crying over the tragedy of the character he now inhabits. He knows that in the game's lore, Lobelia was pure evil, but as a player, he saw the broken boy beneath the mask. He can't let this happen again. He stands up, wiping the tears from his face. He is Lobelia now. He has the power, the knowledge, and the chance to rewrite history. He won't be the man who dies in a ditch while the world cheers. He looks out over the horizon, his resolve hardening into steel. "I will be recognized by every single person in this world," he declares. Not as a monster, but as someone they cannot help but respect. And the first step is proving that he's changed. We move to a dimly lit tavern where Lobelia sits alone, a single document spread out before him. The air is thick with tension. The other patrons aren't just looking at him. They are watching him like a coiled snake, their whispers hissing through the room. The innkeeper approaches, his hands shaking so violently the tray rattles. "That's all for your order, right?" he stammers, sweating through his shirt. Lobelia looks up, his expression unreadable, and gives a simple yes. He sees the raw fear in the man's eyes and feels a pang of frustration. This is his reality now. He is a pariah. He realizes that words won't be enough to fix this. He needs to do something so undeniably heroic that they have no choice but to see him differently. His target is the Dragon King, Boros. The beast has been terrorizing the Kansas territory for years, and the hero's knights have failed to stop him. If Lobelia can slay a dragon that the good guys couldn't touch, maybe the tide of public opinion will finally turn. A man with a headband suddenly leans over his table, arrogance dripping from his voice. He calls Lobelia the arrogant magician and suggests a partnership. Lobelia doesn't even blink. "Not interested," he says, but the man merely points across the room, grinning. There, sitting in the corner, is Claudia. She's one of the hero's knights, and, more importantly, the person who hates Lobelia more than anyone else in the world. Lobelia realizes he's been under surveillance from the moment he stepped foot in this town. The situation escalates instantly. Another man, looking for a quick payday, splashes a drink directly onto Lobelia's face. He sneers, wondering aloud how much of a bounty he'd collect if he dragged Lobelia's carcass to the knights right now. A masked thug lunges from the side, a sucker punch aimed at Lobelia's temple. But Lobelia's reflexes are inhuman. He shifts his head by an inch, the fist whistling past him, while his eyes remain fixed on the female knight watching from the shadows. He could just take the hits, his magical defense is high enough, but he needs to set a boundary. He whispers a single word, "Shock." A burst of wind magic explodes from his palm, sending the thug flying across the room and knocking the other senseless before they can even scream. The tavern goes silent. Lobelia sighs, dusting off his cloak. He just wanted a quiet meal, but his reputation makes peace an impossibility. He decides to leave before the guards arrive and turn a tavern brawl into an international incident. As he steps out into the cool night air, a voice stops him cold. It's Claudia. She's standing in the street, her hand on the hilt of her sword, accusing him of assaulting innocent adventurers. The irony is so thick it's nauseating. Lobelia doesn't back down. He asks her if her heroic training included ignoring self-defense. He mocks the bias of the knights, pointing out that they only see the crime when the person they hate is the one fighting back. Claudia is fuming, her face turning a deep shade of red, but she eventually turns away. Lobelia watches her go, a bead of sweat rolling down his neck. He managed to keep his cool, but he knows his tongue is still as sharp as a razor, and he needs to control it if he wants to make allies. The next morning brings a strange twist of fate. Lobelia is on a carriage headed toward the mountains, and who should be sitting directly across from him? Claudia. The silence between them is so heavy it feels like it might crush the floorboards. Unable to help himself, he reveals his destination. He's going to kill the Dragon King. Claudia's eyes go wide, her jaw dropping. She can't believe the audacity of this villain claiming a mission meant for the elite knights. She lunges across the carriage, grabbing him by the collar. "That's my mission," she screams, her face inches from his. The carriage driver has to shout for them to settle down before they flip the whole thing over. They reach a massive rockfall that has completely blocked the pass. Lobelia decides to continue on foot, but instead of using a flashy spell that would alert the dragon, he simply leaps over the boulders with effortless grace, leaving the knight behind. Claudia isn't about to let him win. She scales the rocks and lands right behind him, panting. She refuses his suggestion to go home, her voice cracking as she reveals that this territory, the land the dragon is destroying, is her hometown. She accuses him of wanting to join the dragon, of plotting to betray the humans yet again. Lobelia just rolls his eyes and keeps walking. His indifference infuriates her so much that she tries to chase him, only to catch her foot on a loose stone and tumble over the edge of a cliff. She's falling, the jagged rocks below waiting to claim her. "You fool!" Lobelia shouts. He doesn't hesitate. He lunges over the edge, his fingers grazing the air until they lock onto her wrist. With a grunt of exertion, he hauls her back onto the solid path. Claudia lies there, gasping for air, staring up at the man who just saved her life for the second time in 24 hours. For a moment, the hatred in her eyes is replaced by a profound, confused silence. She tries to stand, but her leg gives way. She sprained her ankle badly. Lobelia looks at the setting sun and realizes they aren't going any further today. He decides they'll camp here, and despite her protests, he begins preparing an ointment from local herbs. Under the canopy of stars, Lobelia kneels before his enemy. He uses a delicate touch, applying the crushed herbs and a faint glow of healing magic to her swollen leg. Claudia watches him, her guard finally starting to crack. This isn't how a monster acts. He tells her she'll be fine by morning and moves to the edge of the camp to keep watch. Claudia lies back, watching his silhouette against the fire. She thinks of the stories of the heartless magician and realizes they don't match the man who is currently protecting her while she sleeps. She asks him what he really wants. Why kill the dragon? Lobelia doesn't answer immediately. He's thinking about the game's plot. In the original story, Claudia was supposed to die here. By saving her, he's already changed the world, but he doesn't know if it's for better or worse. He questions why she's out here alone, and she tells him it's a personal score. She doesn't need to explain herself to a criminal. It's a defensive wall, one that Lobelia understands all too well. He knows she can't win alone. He decides he'll let her come along, but he frames it as a challenge. He tells her she has to be the one to free her homeland, as long as she doesn't trip and get in his way. It's a classic Lobelia line, arrogant on the outside, but protective on the inside. As she drifts off, Claudia whispers a soft thank you. Lobelia looks up at the moon, a faint smile touching his lips. Maybe, just maybe, he can do this. He can save the girl, kill the dragon, and finally find a place where he belongs. The next chapter begins with the two of them walking into the deep woods. The air is changing, becoming colder and more oppressive as they approach the heart of the Dragon King's domain. They enter the Kansas territory, and it's a graveyard of what used to be a proud knight stronghold. Now, it's a wasteland controlled by Boros. Lobelia feels the surge of his own power. He knows his character is strong enough to end this, but he has to be careful. Claudia explains the grim reality of the village of Glinta. Every year, They are forced to offer a human sacrifice to the Dragon King to keep him from incinerating the town. Today is the day of the offering, and she warns Lobelia not to be reckless. While she wants to wait for a tactical advantage at dawn, Lobelia's sharp eyes catch movement. Near a nearby farmhouse, demon goons are dragging a screaming girl away. One of them is raising a hand, magic glowing at his fingertips. A massive explosion tears the house apart. The girl, a small child named Toto, screams for her parents through a veil of tears. Claudia and Lobelia watch from the brush, their blood boiling at the senseless cruelty. Claudia recognizes the child. The demons laugh, mocking the parents for trying to help this sacrifice escape. To them, human lives are just fuel for their master's whims. Claudia can't take it. Forgetting her own warnings about caution, she draws her sword and charges. Her heart is leading her now, a pure white flame of justice that Lobelia both admires and worries about. She's a blur of steel and motion, catching the demons completely off guard. She cuts through the first two before they can even process that a knight has entered the fray. She finishes off the perimeter guards and scoops Toto into her arms. The girl recognizes her, and for a brief second, there is a flicker of hope in the middle of the devastation. But the hope is short-lived. A voice, smooth and oily, cuts through the air. A mysterious figure steps out from the shadows, noting with mild annoyance that his subordinates have been slaughtered. This is the Dragon King's head servant, a smug-horned demon who looks at the humans like insects. He declares that he'll take the girl and the knight's head as compensation. Lobelia pushes Toto toward the trees, telling her to run as fast as she can. Claudia clashes with the servant, her blade sparking against his. She shouts about ending this rotten system of sacrifice, but the demon only laughs. To him, the suffering of humans is the natural order of things. The servant is fast, too fast. He parries every one of Claudia's strikes with a single hand, his expression one of bored contempt. She's giving it everything she has, but she can't find a single opening. With a flick of his wrist, the demon disarms her. Her sword spins into the dirt, leaving her defenseless. He looms over her, a cruel grin widening on his face as he prepares to end her life. Suddenly, a white-haired blur interrupts the execution. Lobelia doesn't use magic this time. He uses his raw strength, punching the servant with such force that the demon is sent tumbling through 3 stone walls. Claudia tries to protest, saying it's her fight, but Lobelia just shuts her down. He tells her he's already moved her parents to safety and that he's taking over. His tone is cold, but his actions are anything but. He points toward the massive castle looming in the distance. "We're going to the source," he says. We shift to the interior of that castle, where the Dragon King himself sits upon a throne made of bone and ancient stone. Boros is a massive presence. He turns to his subordinate, a demon named Shandy, and mentions that he felt the death of his servant. It turns out his subordinates are magically linked to him. Their lives are his, and their deaths are an insult. He orders Shandy to wipe out the intruders. He doesn't care how it's done, only that the threat is neutralized. Shandy bows, confident that no human could survive the gauntlet he's about to prepare. Shandy walks to a balcony, looking down at the courtyard where his army of servants is waiting. He expects to see a desperate struggle, but instead, his breath hitches in his throat. The courtyard is a charnel house. Dozens of servants lie dead, and in the center of the carnage stands Lobelia, looking bored. He calls the entire battle trivial, as if he were merely swatting flies instead of dismantling an army. Lobelia looks up, his gaze locking onto Shandy. The sheer malice in his eyes sends Shandy stumbling backward in terror. Lobelia turns to Claudia and tells her to keep moving. The real fight is just beginning. Shandy sprints back to the throne room, his face pale and covered in sweat. He tries to report the situation, but Boros cuts him off. The Dragon King's voice is a low rumble of disappointment that vibrates in Shandy's very bones. Shandy begs for mercy, promising he can still stop them, but Boros is done with him. He doesn't tolerate failure, especially not from someone he once trusted to be his right hand. As Boros prepares to deliver a lethal punishment, the massive throne room doors are blown off their hinges. A wave of dark energy rolls into the room, announcing the arrival of the intruders. The Dragon King smiles, a creepy, toothy grin that doesn't reach his eyes. He welcomes Lobelia and Claudia to his home, and the air in the room becomes so heavy it's hard to breathe. The final boss has been reached. Chapter 4 opens with a stark, white title page, a moment of silence before the storm breaks. The fate of Kansas hangs in the balance. Boros stands from his throne. He's a tall, horned man with long, flowing hair and an aura of absolute authority. He looks at Lobelia and Claudia and introduces himself with the casual confidence of a god. He offers Lobelia a choice. Join him as a servant and rule by his side. He asks why a man of Lobelia's reputation would bother fighting for a wasteland like Kansas. Is it for power? Is it for the throne? Lobelia's answer is simple. I'm here to free Kansas. Claudia looks at him, stunned. She's never heard him speak with such conviction. Boros just sighs, calling the sentiment troublesome and beneath a man of your caliber. Boros reaches into a dark portal and pulls out a massive, ornate sword. He warns them that struggling is a waste of energy. He is a dragon, a creature of legend, and he has no intention of making this a fair fight. He swings the sword with a single hand, and the sheer force of it creates a shockwave that tears up the floor. Lobelia has to throw up a magical shield to keep both him and Claudia from being crushed against the back wall. Lobelia slides back, his boots smoking from the friction. He's impressed. He's never seen a human or demon with this much raw physical power. Boros, meanwhile, notes that Lobelia is significantly stronger than the average hero. Lobelia smirks, his eyes glowing with a dangerous light. The weakest always bark the loudest, he taunts. He begins to chant, and the air around him begins to warp and darken, catching Boros off guard. Claudia sees an opening and lunges, her sword piercing directly through Boros's head. But to her horror, he doesn't die. He doesn't even bleed. He just stands there, complaining about the itch she's causing him. She screams in rage and slashes at him again, but her blade shatters against his skin like it was made of glass. Boros raises his hand for a counterattack, and Lobelia realizes that if he doesn't act now, Claudia is a dead woman. He casts shock again, but this time he directs the blast at Claudia, blowing her safely across the room just as Boros's massive sword cleaves the space where she was standing a second ago. He checks to make sure she's still breathing, then turns his full attention to the dragon. Boros is intrigued by the wind magic, but his eyes narrow as Lobelia pulls out his primary weapon, the rare, eye-covered grimoire. Boros asks if it's dark magic, and Lobelia doesn't answer with words. He summons a dozen jet-black spears, spells of the Hell August tier, and launches them at the Dragon King with the speed of falling stars. Boros spins his sword into a whirlwind, the dark spears shattering against the steel. He's laughing now, enjoying the sensation of a real challenge for the first time in centuries. The dragon leaps, his sword coming down like a guillotine. Lobelia uses a burst of magic to propel himself backward, the floor beneath him exploding into 1,000 shards as the blade hits the tiles. The battle becomes a dance of death. Boros is relentless, his sword strikes coming faster and harder, while Lobelia is forced to use every bit of his agility to stay one step ahead of the destruction. Lobelia finds a moment to breathe and casts Ominous Chain. Spectral, burning links erupt from the floor, binding Boros's arms and legs. The dragon grunts, the heat of the dark magic finally starting to singe his skin. But the chains don't hold. With a roar of pure strength, Boros shatters them, his grin returning. Lobelia feels a cold sweat on his brow. If he keeps fighting like this, he'll run out of mana before he even scratches the beast. He decides it's time to go all out. He raises his grimoire high, the eyes on its cover snapping open. Deadly thunder, he bellows, the words carrying the weight of a divine decree. A pillar of black lightning descends from the ceiling, a roar of sound that drowns out everything else. It strikes Boros directly, engulfing the entire throne room in a violent, blinding explosion. When the smoke finally clears, Boros is embedded deep in the stone wall, his clothes charred and blood trickling from his mouth. For the first time, the Dragon King looks vulnerable. Lobelia takes a shaky breath and turns to check on Claudia, who is still unconscious. He thinks it's over, but a sound behind him makes his heart stop. It's the sound of stone cracking and a body pulling itself free. Boros stands up, cracking his neck. He's bleeding, yes, but he's also smiling. He tells Lobelia that no one has ever pushed him this far, and the compliment feels like a death sentence. "You're still alive?" Lobelia gasps, his mind racing. A dark, suffocating aura begins to pour out of Boros. The castle walls start to buckle and rupture as he releases his true power. This isn't just a man anymore. It's a force of nature. The transformation is terrifying. Boros grows, his skin turning to scales, his limbs elongating until a massive red dragon fills the room. He boasts that no warrior has seen this form in 500 years. Lobelia just looks at him and asks if he knows what they call someone who is big in size, but small in spirit. The insult, a small fry, hits Boros harder than the lightning did. The dragon roars in fury, a sound that shatters the remaining windows in the hall, and lunges with a claw the size of a carriage. Lobelia dodges by a hair's breadth and counters with a spell called Disaster. He's starting to realize something is wrong, though. The dragon's energy feels different, more erratic than it should be according to the game's logic. As he prepares his next move, the scene shifts into the mind of the unconscious Claudia. She's dreaming, drifting back to a time before the war, before the hate, when her life was full of light. She sees herself as a little girl, sitting at a dinner table with a book on her lap. She tells her parents she wants to be a knight because it's her aspiration, her voice full of a child's pure, untainted hope. She narrates her dream of becoming like the legendary knight who wielded the holy sword Raishalom. She wanted to be a shield for the weak, a hero that people could believe in. She remembers her friends, especially the energetic Monica, who used to lead their exploration team into the woods. They were so sure that Claudia would always be there to protect them. She remembers the feeling of their hands in hers. Even though she knew she had to leave one day to train in the capital, she never imagined a world where they wouldn't be waiting for her to come home. Then the dragon came. He took their money, their homes, and finally, their sisters. He turned the castle into a prison and demanded a toll in human lives, starting with Monica, the girl Claudia looked up to most. The memory of Monica being dragged away, screaming in pain, is a scar on Claudia's soul. She remembers holding her broken wooden sword, swearing she would get strong enough to kill the monsters. But she was just a child. The next year, it was Claudia's turn. Her parents showed her a hole under the floorboards, their faces wet with tears as they begged her to run, to survive, even if it meant leaving them behind to face the dragon's wrath. Her father handed her a real sword, his hands trembling. He told her to go to the capital and become the knight she always dreamed of being. It was the last time she ever felt the warmth of their embrace. She fled into the night, the sound of her own sobbing the only thing she could hear. She called herself a coward for leaving her family, a failure who didn't deserve the title of knight. That guilt has been her only fuel for years. In the present, Claudia's eyes snap open. She's inside a protective magical barrier, and Lobelia is standing just outside it, facing the dragon. "Have you awakened, Claudia?" he asks, his voice surprisingly gentle. Something changes in her. She realizes that her atonement isn't just about dying for her village, it's about living to save it. And for the first time, she sees Lobelia not as a villain, but as the partner she needs to finally slay her demons. Boros is tired of the talk. He gathers a swirling mass of energy in his maw, preparing his ultimate move, Last Rite, Dragon's Tear. It's an attack designed to wipe everything in its path off the face of the map. Suddenly, a shadow blurs past Lobelia. It's Claudia. She leaps into the air, her sword glowing with a desperate, brilliant light. Both the dragon and the magician are caught completely by surprise. She's higher than she's ever jumped, her silhouette framed against the moon. "Please lend me your strength," she screams to the family she left behind, her heart finally open and free of the cowardice that haunted her. She drives her blade deep into the dragon's skull, the impact sending a shockwave through the room. "We'll defeat you," she roars, and for a moment, the unstoppable Dragon King is the one feeling the cold touch of fear. She falls, her strength spent, but Lobelia catches her before she hits the ground. He tells her to stay quiet and watch. She's done her part. She's opened the way. Now, it's time for the arrogant magician to show why he's the most feared man in the world. Boros's wounds start to knit back together, the legendary regeneration of dragon blood. Lobelia knows he can't win a war of attrition. He needs a spell that bypasses the laws of life and death entirely. He begins the chant for a summoning so forbidden it was removed from most history books. He is calling for the Gate of Fear, a tribute that will end Boros's reign once and for all. The air behind the dragon tears open. A colossal, stone gate appears, covered in hundreds of blinking, bloodshot eyes. This is the fictional Hell's Gate, a manifestation of pure nightmare. Boros screams, his dragon voice cracking as massive, rusted chains shoot out from the gate. They wrap around his neck, his wings, and his tail, dragging him toward the abyssal darkness inside. With a thunderous boom, the doors of the gate slam shut, and the entire structure vanishes into thin air. The silence that follows is deafening. Claudia asks where it went, and Lobelia admits he doesn't even know. Some things are better left a mystery. They return to the village, expecting a hero's welcome. Instead, they are met with cold stares and terrified whispers. The villagers see the black magic, they see the arrogant mage, and they only feel more fear. Lobelia realizes that saving them didn't change who he is to them. He turns to leave, muttering that this was a waste of time. But Claudia isn't having it. She clenches her fist, her knuckles white, and screams at the ungrateful crowd. "Know your shame, you idiots," she bellows, her voice echoing through the square. She defends him with everything she has, reminding them that he did what no one else could. Little Toto runs up and hugs Claudia, then looks at Lobelia and apologizes. He just shakes his head. He didn't do it for a thank you or a reward. As he walks toward the edge of town, he hears footsteps behind him. It's Claudia. She's crying, but she's smiling too. She shouts his name and gives him a heartfelt thank you that actually reaches his heart. The other villagers, inspired by her courage, start calling out their gratitude as well. Lobelia doesn't look back. He just raises a hand in a silent wave, disappearing into the forest. For the first time, the burden of his name feels a little lighter. A few days later, at the guild headquarters, the hero Reinhard opens a letter from Claudia. His eyes go wide as he reads the report. He can't believe it. Lobelia, the man he fought for 2 days, was the one who saved the Kansas territory. In the background, a woman swoons over the news of Lobelia-sama's heroics, while a blonde girl in the corner looks on with a contemplative expression. The world is starting to notice that the villain might not be who they thought he was. Chapter 6 marks a new beginning. The dragon is dead, but the world is large, and Lobelia's journey is far from over. He's traveling through a new country now, still trying to do good, but the rejection is constant. Everywhere he goes, his face is recognized and doors are slammed. He's about to give up on humanity for the day when he hears a strange, pathetic cry. It's a beast girl with cat ears, looking absolutely bedraggled. She collapses against him, her stomach growling so loud it's embarrassing. She begs for food, and Lobelia realizes this is the perfect, low-stakes chance to raise his favorability rating. He hands her some dried meat, and she eats it like she hasn't seen food in a month. When he asks for her name, she gets a smug little look on her face, telling him he better be ready to be impressed. She introduces herself as Reincarnated, the daughter of the Beastmen tribe leader. Lobelia's reaction is instant. He turns around and starts walking the other way. Rydia screams in confusion, chasing after him. He remembers her from the game. Rydia is a self-centered princess whose antics eventually spark a massive war between humans and beastmen. Associating with her is a PR nightmare waiting to happen. But she won't leave him alone. She claims she has to reward him for the meat and dramatically declares that she's going to become his wife. It's a ridiculous, over-the-top gesture that only a bratty princess would think is a gift. Lobelia flatly says no. He tells her to go home. She tries everything, showing off her looks, even offering to be his pet, but Lobelia just looks more and more annoyed. He doesn't want a wife. He wants a clean record. He snaps at her, telling her to stop acting like a child. Rydia starts to respond, but then her eyes roll back and she collapses. She wasn't just hungry, she was exhausted and sick. He realizes she has a high fever. Despite his best efforts to be heartless, he can't just leave her in the dirt. He builds a fire and cooks a pot of soothing porridge, the smell eventually waking her up. She eats the porridge, her eyes shining. She's never had anyone take care of her like this without wanting something in return. She starts to think that maybe this human wouldn't be a bad mate after all. Lobelia tells her to leave as soon as the fever breaks, but she refuses. She says she has a mission. She needs to meet someone before she's forced to become the leader of her tribe and stay in the forest forever. The person she wants to see is Rachel, a magic student she used to be friends with. Lobelia realizes that if he helps her, he might gain an ally in the Beastmen tribe. He offers to take her, but it's going to cost her a favor later. She happily agrees and gives him a big hug, which he awkwardly tries to push away. But the light-hearted moment ends when Lobelia senses something in the trees. They're being followed. Rydia admits that 2 members of the heroic knights have been pursuing her. They want to bring her back to the forest by force to prevent any diplomatic incidents. As night falls, the hunters close in. The pursuers are Zordia, a girl with twin tails and a wild look in her eyes, and Jake, a hooded archer. They're discussing their mission, making it clear they'll do whatever it takes to retrieve the princess without starting a war. Lobelia doesn't hide. He jumps down from a high branch with Rydia in his arms, landing right in front of them. The knights are shocked, but Jake is already drawing his bow, aiming for the villain's back. Lobelia uses Breath of the Flame Spirit. A wave of fire incinerates the incoming arrows mid-air, and he lands with the grace of a cat. He can feel another attack coming from a different angle. An explosive arrow goes off, filling the clearing with smoke. Jake and Zordia move in to check the bodies, assuming no one could have survived a blast at that range. They turn around to find Lobelia standing right behind them, completely unharmed. They realize they aren't just fighting a kidnapper. They're fighting the arrogant magician, and he's acting as the princess's bodyguard. Zordia doesn't care about the name. She gets permission to engage and leaps at Lobelia with a massive scythe, her movements crazed and unpredictable. Jake stays back, providing a constant stream of cover fire. Lobelia is a master. He blocks the scythe strikes with a flick of his wrist and swats Jake's arrows out of the air like they were nothing more than bothersome gnats. He's not even breaking a sweat. Zordia backs off, frustrated. She asks why he isn't fighting back, why he's just defending. To her, a man like Lobelia should be trying to kill them all in a shower of black fire. Lobelia explains that he just wants to talk. Jake, the more level-headed of the two, suggests they listen. After all, if Lobelia wanted them dead, they would have been ashes 5 minutes ago. Lobelia asserts his dominance, reminding them that he could end their lives at any moment. Jake reluctantly agrees. He stares Lobelia in the eye and asks the question that the whole world wants to know. Arrogant magician Lobelia, what is your purpose? Lobelia tells the truth. He's just helping a girl meet her friend. But the knights don't believe him. To them, every word out of a villain's mouth is a lie designed to lead them to their doom. That is a lie, right? Jake asks, his hand tightening on his bow. Lobelia realizes that once again, his past is a wall he can't climb. He prepares for a real fight to buy Rydia time to escape. But before the first spell can fly, Rydia herself leaps into the air with a loud Nya and delivers a perfect, crushing dropkick right into Jake's face, ending the tension with a bang.